A collective gasp swept through the hall like a gust of wind, extinguishing every candle. Asama felt the world tilt beneath her. Vanished, never return. Her vision blurred as tears streamed down her face. She managed a weak, "My king, please." But the king had already averted his gaze, unable to look at her. The queen let out a satisfied, vindictive huff, glaring at Asama as if daring her to defy the king's order. Princesses Adeze, Adanna, and Adako each wore looks of triumph, thinly veiled as proper solemnity. Aduri ran to Asama and hugged her tightly around the waist, crying, "No, father, please, don't do this." Asama, numb and heartbroken, gently stroked Aduri's hair. "Shh, it's all right, sweet one," she whispered, though nothing felt all right. "It'll be okay." The prince stood like a statue, disbelief and pain etched on his face. His hands were coiled into fists at his sides. Never had he felt so powerless. He wanted to shout, to argue, to say this was wrong. But the words died in his throat. He knew his father's words was final. And worst of all, he knew deep in his heart that this was all terribly wrong and unjust. Guards stepped forward awkwardly to escort Asama out, unsure whether to grab her or simply show the way. The king added quietly, "You'll be given some provisions for your journey, but you must leave tonight." Tonight. The word echoed in Asama's mind. This very night, she will be cast out from the palace that had become her new home, away from the kitchen where she found joy, away from him. She looked up, then, her teary eyes seeking the prince's. He finally moved, taking a step forward as if to reach for her, but the queen deftly stepped between them. Her hand on the prince's chest. "Let her go," Queen Nneka said coldly. "It's done." The hall remained silent. Many guests looked down at their hands, uncomfortable at witnessing such a personal family drama during what was meant to be a celebration. Some quietly whispered their farewells and slipped away, deciding the feast was over before it even truly began. As the guards gently took Asama by the arm, Aduri refused to let go of her. "I'm coming with you to your room," Aduri insisted, tears still on her cheek. The queen did not object, perhaps thinking it's better if Aduri was out of sight during the aftermath. The prince could only watch as Asama was led away, Aduri trailing behind, sobbing, and the great doors of the hall swung shut behind them. Inside the hall, the queen began loudly ordering servants to clean up the mess and bring her fresh clothes, as though banishing someone was just a slight hiccup in the evening. The prince turned and walked out of a side door without another word to anyone. His heart was pounding and breaking all at once, and he needed air. He needed to think. Under a pale silver of moon, the palace courtyard lay quiet. A soft chorus of cricket serenaded the night, oblivious to the heartbreak unfolding. Asama stood by the great bronze palace gate, now closed for the night, waiting for them to be opened one last time for her. She had changed out of her soup-stained kitchen dress and now wore a simple blue wrapper, hastily given to her by one of the kind servant women. On her back was a small bundle, all her earthly possessions tied in a cloth, and in her hand a calabash of food and water the guards had provided for her journey. Aduri stood by Asama's side, holding her hand tightly. The young princess's eyes were red from crying. In her other hand, she clutched Asama's old wooden spoon, a keepsake she had begged to hold onto. Aduri had slipped away from her nurse to come see Asama off, refusing to let her friend leave without a proper goodbye. "It's not fair," Aduri whispered, voice trembling. None of it is fair. She had tried one last time to beg her mother to reconsider, but the queen would not even let her speak. Aduri was smart to suspect her sisters had done something to cause the spill, but she couldn't prove it. The injustice of it all made her tiny body shake with anger. Asama knelt down to look Aduri in the eye. In the glow of a single lantern by the gate, Aduri saw that Asama was smiling gently, though tears shone in her eyes. It's okay, Ada, Asama said softly, brushing a tear from the girl's cheek. Sometimes life is not fair, but you must be strong, alright? I'll be alright, I promise. Aduri threw her arms around Asama's neck, hugging her fiercely. I'll miss you so much, she sniffled. The palace will not be the same without you, Asa. Asama's own tears finally fell then, rolling down her cheeks. She hugged Aduri back just as tightly. I'll miss you too, my brave little princess, she whispered. You have been like a sister to me. I will never forget your kindness and your courage. She cupped Aduri's cheek in her palm. Promise me you will keep being kind and strong no matter what. Aduri nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I promise. She reached into Asama's bundle and took out a small cloth package. I packed some roasted yams and granite for you, for the road, she said, pressing it into Asama's hands. Asama let out a shaky laugh. You thought of everything, didn't you? For a moment, the two managed a tiny smile together amidst the sorrow. A guard cleared his throat gently. It was time. The heavy gates creaked as they were unbarred and swung open, revealing the road beyond, a dusty path edged by tall palm trees, leading out to the sleeping village and the dark forest beyond. Asama stood and took a deep breath. The air was cool and carried the scent of night blooming flowers. Far in the distance, a solitary drum beat from the ongoing festival celebrations in the village, a lonely doom, 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 like a heartbeat in the dark. Gathering her courage, Asama stepped beyond the palace gates. Aduri walked with her as far as the threshold, still holding her hand until the last possible moment. Don't go, Aduri whimpered softly, fresh tears threatening to fall again. Asama turned to the little princess and gently untangled her fingers. I must go, Ada. I believe this is not the end of our story, she said, trying to sound hopeful. Be good and take care of the prince for me, okay? She attempted a playful tone, but her voice quavered. Aduri nodded, covering her mouth as another sob escaped. I will, she managed to say. Two guards with lanterns stepped out to accompany Asama a short way down the road, as was customary to ensure she safely passed the outskirts of the palace grounds. Asama turned to them and requested softly, just a moment, please. She looked back at the palace one more time. Its high walls and turret loomed against the starry sky. The windows were mostly dark now, except for a faint glow from the great hall and one other window high in a tower, the prince's chamber, though she didn't know that. Inside that lit window, the prince stood in the shadows, watching with pain in his chest. He had been searching for Asama desperately after leaving the hall, only to learn she was already at the gate. He arrived at his balcony just in time to see her stepping out, Aduri clinging to her side. In his hand, he gripped the edge of the stone railing so tightly his knuckles were white. Every instinct in him shouted to run down to the gate, to stop her from leaving, but he knew it was too late. The king's decree had been made. If he publicly defied it tonight, it would disgrace his father and perhaps even harm Asama more. Still, his heart ached with the urge to do something, anything to fix this. Down at the gate, Asama didn't see the prince watching, but she felt something, perhaps the weight of his gaze or just the pull of her own heart. On impulse, she did something rather curious and beautiful. Setting down her bundle and calabash, Asama moved a few steps away from Aduri and the guard into a patch of moonlight just beyond the gate. She wiped her tears, took a steady breath, and slowly raised her arms outward, almost as if to embrace the night. Then, in the silence, Asama began to dance. It was a gentle dance, the kind one might dance alone to console oneself. Her feet glided in small, sorrowful steps across the dusty road, and her arms swayed softly like the branches of a weeping willow. She moved to the quiet rhythm of that distant drum and the music of the cricket. With each step, her wrapper swelled slightly around her ankles, and the moonlight caught the tears on her face, making them shine like silver. Aduri watched in wonder, her sadness forgotten in awe. The guards exchanged puzzled glances but did not interfere. It was as if some quiet magic had captivated them all. Up in his tower, the prince felt his breath catch. Even from afar, he could see the grace in Asama's movement. The silent song her body sang. In that moment, she looked every bit a queen of the night, commanding the very moon and stars with her sorrowful dance. His chest tightened and he realized tears had formed in his own eyes. Asama danced and danced softly, turning her pain into motion. It was an old dance from her village, one her mother had taught her for times of grief. When your heart is too heavy for words, her mother used to say, let your feet speak for you. And so, Asama's feet spoke of heartbreak, of farewell, of hope that refused to fully die. Finally, she slowed down to a stop. She placed her hands together in a gesture of gratitude or prayer and bowed her head, perhaps toward the palace, perhaps toward Aduri, or perhaps toward the unseen prince, for all of them at once. Aduri stepped forward and hugged Asama one last time around the waist. Asama stroked the girl's hair lovingly. Goodbye, Ada, she whispered. May the gods protect you. Goodbye, Asama, Aduri replied through her tears. I will pray for you every night. Asama managed a brave smile for the child. Then gently disentangled herself. She picked up her bundle and calabash. With one more deep breath, she turned and began walking down the moonlit road. Aduri stood at the gate, watching her dear friend go until Asama's figure grew smaller and the darkness nearly swallowed her up. One of the guards placed a kindly hand on Aduri's shoulder. Princess, we should get you inside, he said softly. Aduri reluctantly let herself be led back past the gate, which slowly ground shut once more. The harsh sound of the bar falling back into place made Aduri flinch. It sounded so final. Yet, unknown to Aduri, the prince had slipped out of his chambers and down the stairs while Asama danced, shielded by the shadows. He arrived at an alcove on the outer wall just in time to see the gate closed and Asama's distant form walking away beyond the palace light. The prince pressed a hand against the cool stone wall, his heart aching. In the quiet night, he whispered, I'm sorry, Asama, I'm so sorry. The wind carried his words, but only the silent stars bore witness. As Asama disappeared down the road, the lonely drum beat continued from the village, and the night deepened. The prince remained there in the darkness, watching long after she was gone, with tears silently tracing down his cheeks. In the kingdom of Umudike, a heavy silence fell over the royal palace in the days following Asama's banishment. It was as if the sun itself refused to shine as brightly. Servants moved quietly, their eyes downcast, and even the birds perched on the palace walls sang in softer tones. The warmth that Asama's presence had brought to the palace kitchens and halls was gone, leaving behind a chill of uncertainty and regret. Prince Obina's laughter, once the bright music of the court, was nowhere to be heard. Instead, the young prince had taken ill. It started with a quiet sadness, that settled in his heart the very night Asamma was sent away. He missed the gentle royal chef, her kind smile, her delicious meals, and the way she could make any problem seem smaller with her wise words. The prince refused his food, pushing away even his favorite dishes. Soon, sadness gave way to sickness. By the third dawn after her banishment, Prince Obinna was bedridden with a burning fever and a weakness that confounded the palace healers. The palace was thrown into confusion and despair. The king paced the marble floors of his throne room, his rich robes swishing anxiously around his feet. Proud King Obika, who seldom showed worry, now wore a deep frown and had dark circles under his eyes from the sleepless nights. The queen, usually elegant and composed, was distraught. She hovered by her son's bedside, wringing her hands. She pressed cool clothes to his forehead and murmured prayers under her breath. The three eldest princesses, each known for her haughty beauty, huddled together in a corner of the prince's chamber with faces pale from fear. Princess Aduri, the youngest daughter, hovered nearby, her eyes filled with tears. Aduri had always adored her brother, and unlike her sisters, she had been fond of Asamma, often sneaking down to the kitchens to chat and laugh with the warm-hearted chef. Now, Aduri's heart was heavy with guilt and worry. She alone dared to whisper, "Maybe we should not have sent Asamma away." But her mother silenced her with a quick shake of the head. All attention was on the prince's grave condition. In the corridors outside the prince's room, anxious whispers filled the air like buzzing bees. Two maidservants huddled together, exchanging fearful gossip. "Have you heard? The prince hasn't eaten for days," one maid whispered, eyes wide. "They say he grows weaker by the hour." "Oh dear, what could be wrong with him? Could it be a curse?" The other replied, glancing nervously toward the prince's door. A royal guard passed by carrying a bowl of water and scolded them in a low voice. "Keep your voices down. This is no time for idle chatter. We must find a cure, not spread rumors." Despite his stern words, even the guard's face was etched with concern, for no remedy had worked so far. The finest healers in Umudike had been summoned. They came with calabashes of herbs, roots, and mysterious concoctions. In the prince's chamber, a stern herbalist shook a rattle over the bed and then gently poured a bitter tonic of forest leaves between the prince's lips. Moments after swallowing the draught, the prince broke into a sweat, but his eyes remained shut and his breathing stayed shallow. Next came a renowned Dibia, a spiritual healer with a painted face and jingling charms around his neck. He chanted incantations and placed healing stones on the prince's palms and forehead. The royal family held their breath, hoping for a miracle. Yet, Prince Obinna did not stir. His condition remained unchanged. As the sun set on the fourth day of the prince's illness, a somber hush blanketed the palace. Courtiers spoke in low tones. The palace drummers did not dare beat a single drum in the great hall. In desperation, King Obika sent messengers to every corner of the kingdom, promising a great reward to anyone who could cure his son. Despite the promise of wealth and favor, none succeeded in reviving the prince. With each failed attempt, a seed of fear grew in everyone's heart. What if the prince never recovered? On the 5th day, as dawn's first light crept over Umudike, an air of anticipation and dread pervaded the palace. The king had sent for Chika the seer, an old and respected sage who lived at the edge of the great forest. Chika was known to have visions of truths hidden from ordinary eyes. With eyes milky from age, though blind to the physical world, he saw with the inner eyes of wisdom. The frail seer arrived, guided gently into the prince's chamber by 2 royal guards. He wore a cloak the color of dried kola nut and carried a long carved staff decorated with cowrie shells. Chika stood at Prince Obina's bedside and placed a wrinkled hand on the prince's chest. He closed his eyes and began to hum a low, resonant tune, calling on the wisdom of the ancestors. The only sounds in the room were the seer's soft humming, the prince's labored breathing, and the distant crowing of rooster in the village. The royal family watched in tense silence. Princess Aduri, standing near the foot of the bed, thought she heard Chika whisper Asama's name as he walked. Her heart fluttered with both hope and confusion. Asama, what could the kind chef have to do with her brother's illness? She wondered. Suddenly, Chika's eyes snapped open. He stepped back, leaning on his staff, and fixed the king with a gaze that seemed to pierce through pride and fear alike. Your Majesty, he said in a grave, raspy voice, the spirits have spoken to me. Queen Nneka rushed forward, hope battling fear in her eyes. King Obika straightened his back and tried to appear calm. Though his fingers gripped the edge of the prince's bed, his voice trembled as he asked, what have you seen, wise one? What must we do to save my son? The old seer closed his eyes for a moment, as if listening to a distant voice only he could hear. Then he spoke slowly, each word heavy with meaning. The fate of the prince, Chika said, is tied to the one this palace has cast out. His life is bound with hers by threads unseen. Only she can heal what ails him. For a moment, his words hung in the air, baffling those who heard. The queen blinked in confusion. The princesses exchanged puzzled glances. Aduri gasped softly, a name forming on her lips. Asama. Could it be true? The only person cast out of the palace was Asama, the humble chef whom Aduri already suspected was connected to this tragedy. King Obika's face hardened with disbelief. The chef? You can't possibly mean that lowly girl. He burst out, though his voice quivered. The proud king could not fathom that the cure for his royal son lay in the hands of someone he had deemed unworthy. This cannot be, Queen Nneka whispered, shaking her head. Yet inside her chest, a pang of remorse stirred. Had they been terribly wrong to send Asama away? Chika gently thumped his staff on the floor, the hollow talk sound drawing all eyes back to him. He spoke again, louder this time. Pride and prejudice have caused a great wrong in this palace, the seer declared. The prince's heart is broken, and his spirit will not return without the one it loves. Asama is the key. The gods whisper that her touch, her presence, is the medicine for Prince Obina's soul. A heavy silence followed. King Obika's cheeks flushed as memories of Asamma's tear-streaked face on the day of her banishment flooded back. He remembered how she had knelt and pleaded her innocence over the misunderstanding that occurred, and how he, blinded by anger and family pride, had ordered her out. Now, the king's stomach twisted with the realization. Perhaps, in casting her out, he had also cast out his son's happiness and will to live. Queen Nneka broke the silence, her voice small and trembling. What do we do now, Your Majesty? All eyes turned to the king. His jaw tightened. For a moment, Obika's pride fought to speak. Surely he, the king, would not bow to this. But then, a weak groan escaped Prince Obina's lips. Even in his fevered dreams, the prince seemed to be reaching for something, for someone. The sight of his son struggling for life made the king's pride crumble like clay under rain. King Obika let out a long, shuddering breath. His shoulders sagged under the weight of worry and regret. We must find Asamma at once, he said quietly. The queen closed her eyes in relief at those words, and Princess Aduri managed a hopeful smile through her tears. In that moment, the mood in the room shifted from despair to determination. King Obika cleared his throat and straightened up, regaining a bit of his regal bearing. Guards! He called out toward the open door. In seconds, 2 guards appeared, awaiting orders. Prepare a search party immediately. Ride to every corner of the land if you must. Bring Asamma back to the palace at once. He paused, swallowing hard before adding, Tell her the king humbly requests her return. Those last words were the hardest he had ever had to speak. Courtiers and family members exchanged astonished looks. The mighty king of Umudike, known for his pride, was humbling himself to ask a simple chef for help, but no one dared remark on it. They all understood this was their final hope. The palace guards sprang into action. Within the hour, a trio of royal horsemen galloped out of the palace gates, their horses' hooves crackling urgently on the road. The villagers of Umudike, already anxious from the news of the prince's illness, watched curiously as the riders thundered through the morning market. Market women paused in arranging their goods to whisper among themselves. Where are the king's guards rushing to so early? One trader muttered as dust swirled around her plantain store. Did you not hear? The prince is ill, another woman replied while balancing a basket of yams on her hip. I heard no healer has managed to cure him yet. A man selling goat's meat chimed in, shaking his head. An old grandmother sitting by a pile of oranges clicked her tongue. She hissed under her breath. The gods must be angry. Or perhaps it's because of that poor girl they chased away. She nodded knowingly, referring to Asamma. Some listeners frowned thoughtfully. A few scoffed at the idea that a humble chef could be connected to the prince's condition, but others murmured in agreement. Already, whispers spread that the palace misfortune might be the result of the injustice done to Asamma. Oblivious to the village gossip, the guards rode her down the red earth road that led beyond the town, towards the farming hamlet where Asama's family lived. The morning air was cool and scented with dew and blooming hibiscus. After some miles, they spotted clusters of mud wall huts and fields of cassava and plantain trees, Asama's home village. The lead guard, Okoye, slowed his horse as they entered the hamlet, and the others followed suit. Children, carrying pails of water, stopped and gaped at the sight of ununiformed palace guards in their quiet village. Guard Okoye dismounted in front of a small compound where an elderly man sat on a wooden stool, tending a cooking fire. The guard approached respectfully. "Good day, elder," he greeted, dipping his head. "We seek a young woman named Asama, who once served in the palace as a chef." The old man straightened slowly, leaning on his walking stick. His eyes, though cloudy with age, were sharp with concern. "What business do palace guards have with our Asama?" he asked wearily. This old man was Asama's father. Before guard Okoye could answer, a familiar gentle voice called out from inside the hut, "Papa, who is it?" A moment later, Asama emerged, carrying a clay bowl of steaming porridge. She froze at the sight of the royal guards. Her heart began to thud. In the few days since she had returned home, Asama's world had been quiet and sad. She wore a simple blue cotton wrapper, and a scarf covered her braided hair. Her face looked tired, and her once bright eyes were puffy from crying. For a moment, fear gripped her. Why had the king's guards come here? Had something happened to the prince? Swallowing hard, Asama set down the bowl and stepped forward. She greeted the guards with a polite bow. "Good day, sirs," she said, steadying her voice. Guard Okoye removed his helmet, a gesture of respect that startled Asama and her father. The guard cleared his throat. "Asama," he began gently, "the king has sent us to find you." "Prince Obinna," he hesitated, seeing the alarm flare in Asama's eyes at the mention of the prince. "The prince is very ill. No healer has been able to help him. The king humbly requests your return to the palace at once." Asama nearly dropped the bowl she had been holding. Prince Obinna ill? And the king requesting her return humbly. She could hardly process the words. Her banishment from the palace was only days past, and the stench of it still lingered. Now, the prince was sick, and they were calling her back. Her mind swelled with worry and confusion. In her shock, her knees felt weak. She reached out to steady herself against the door frame of the hut. Asama's father furrowed his brow, his grip on his walking stick tightening. "They sent you away, my child," he said, voice tinged with anger on her behalf. "Why would they call for you now?" He has spent the last few nights comforting Asama as she sobbed into her pillow, heartbroken and humiliated. The old man's protective instincts bristled at the thought of his daughter being summoned back after such treatment. Asama turned to her father and gently placed a hand on his arm. "Papa, I must go," she said, her voice soft but resolved. "The prince, he needs me." She had loved the prince in secret with all her heart, and the thought of him suffering made her forget her own hurt. Her eyes shone not with fear now, but determination. Her father searched her face, and after a moment he sighed. shoulders slumping. He knew that look in his daughter's eyes. "Go, my child," he said quietly, "and may the ancestors protect you." He laid a trembling hand on her head in a fatherly blessing, though tears were gathering in his eyes. Without another word, Guard Okoye helped Asama onto his horse. She settled herself behind him, and the other two guards took position on either side. A few villagers had gathered at a distance, watching curiously. Among them, Asama saw her childhood friend Adeze biting her knuckle in worry. Asama managed a small reassuring smile and a wave. "I'll be all right," her eyes seemed to say. Adeze nodded and called out, "We'll pray for you," as the guards kicked their horses into motion. They set off at a brisk gallop. Asama clung to Guard Okoye's waist, her heart pounding, not from the ride, but from fear and hope for Prince Obinna. The morning sun climbed in the sky, chasing away the dawn mist. Villages and fields blurred by as they raced back to Umudike. After a time, Guard Okoye glanced back at Asama. We are all hoping you can save him," he said, raising his voice above the wind. "The palace has been a mourning without you." There was kindness in his tone, and perhaps guilt as well, for he had been one of the guards who escorted her out of the palace gates. Asama's eyes widened in surprise. She had felt so alone and forgotten after being cast out, not realizing that anyone at the palace missed her. A warm resolve filled her chest. "I will do everything I can to help Prince Obinna," she vowed in her heart. She closed her eyes, allowing the rushing air to cool the tears on her lashes, and silently prayed, "Oh, great spirit, give me the strength to help Prince Obinna. I will do anything to see him healthy and happy again." Back at the palace, King Obika waited in the main courtyard, pacing anxiously. The moment a messenger penguin had arrived with news that the guards had found Asama and were returning with her, the king had ordered fresh palm wine and kola nuts to be set out, a welcome offering of peace and respect. Now, he stood by a table bearing these gifts, flanked by Queen Nneka and their children. The queen fiddled with her coral bead necklace, her face tight with worry and remorse. The three older princesses hovered just behind their mother, and Ajuri stood at the edge of the steps, craning her neck to see down the road. At last came the clatter of hoofs on the stone path outside. The gate swung open and the guards rode in. Asama's heart hammered as she saw the king and royal family arrayed and waiting. Even the palace servants had gathered at the edges of the courtyard, curious and hopeful. The moment that Okoye's horse halted, Asama slid off. Her knees felt a bit weak from the long ride, but she steadied herself and immediately dropped into a respectful kneel, bowing her head low. "Your Majesty," she said clearly, "I have come as you requested." A collective sigh of relief seemed to pass through the assembly. King Obika stepped forward quickly. It was impossible to miss the concern and gratitude on his face as he looked down at Asama. Only days ago, she had left these grounds in tears. Now, she returned as their potential savior. Gently, the king reached out and took Asama's hands in his, helping her to her feet. A ripple of gasps echoed from the onlookers. The king of Umudike was personally assisting a common girl to rise. "Thank you for coming, Asama," King Obika said, his voice humble and sincere. "My son's life may depend on you." He swallowed hard, and his eyes glistened. I was wrong to send you away. Please, if you can find it in your heart, forgive us and save Prince Obinna. Asamma stood there astonished. Not only was the mighty king holding her hands, he was apologizing to her. She quickly shook her head, tears springing to her eyes. Your Majesty, there is nothing to forgive, she said earnestly. Truly, I know you believed you were protecting your family. She gently withdrew her hands and added, Please, take me to the prince. That's all I ask. At this, Princess Aduri flew down the steps and threw herself at Asamma in a tight hug. Asamma, you are back, she cried. Then, realizing everyone was watching, the young princess stepped back and wiped her eyes, grinning. I'm so happy you are here, she whispered, squeezing Asamma's hands. Queen Nneka approached more slowly with the three older princesses. The queen's eyes were red-rimmed, and she managed a faint smile. Welcome back, Asamma, she said softly. The other princesses nodded, offering weak smiles of their own. They all looked a little embarrassed, remembering their harsh words to her before. Asamma simply bowed her head respectfully to them, though her heart was pounding with emotions, relief, nervousness, even a bit of vindication. She kept her focus. There will be time later to sort out feelings and apologies. Right now, a life hung in the balance. Come, Queen Nneka said gently. This way. Surrounded by the royal family, Asamma hurried into the palace she thought she would never enter again. They led Asamma straight to the prince's chamber. At the door, Asamma took a deep breath to still herself. Inside, the room was dim and quiet. Heavy curtains were drawn over the windows to keep out the harsh afternoon sun, and only a few oil lamps cast a faint golden glow. The air was thick with the scent of burnt herbs and medicine. Prince Obinna lay deathly still on his bed, his eyes closed and face ashen. Asamma's heart clenched at the sight. In all her time at the palace, she had known the prince to be vibrant, always laughing, riding his horse, or playfully stealing a meat pie from the kitchens. Now, he looked so fragile, like a candle flickering in the wind. A bowl of untouched broth sat on the bedside table. It seemed he hadn't eaten for days. Asamma swallowed the lump in her throat and quickly approached the bed. King Obika stood at the foot of the bed like a guard statue, while Queen Nneka perched on the mattress's edge, holding one of her son's hands in both of hers. By the wall, old Chika the seer observed silently, and a few trusted servants hovered near the doorway. Princess Aduri and her sisters clustered just inside the room, eyes wide and anxious. Asamma gently knelt by Prince Obinna's bedside. She reached out and took his free hand. It was burning hot and limp, with no returning squeeze of recognition. My prince, Asamma whispered, her voice catching. I am here. She willed him to hear her somehow. Was it her imagination, or did his eyelid flutter ever so lightly? Asamma's heart gave a tiny leap of hope. She bowed her head, thinking desperately, what could she do that all the wise healers had not? Then, like a soft breeze, carrying the memory of distant music, Asamma remembered something, the lullaby and dance her mother had taught her long ago. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. When you have done all you can, sometimes you must call on the spirit with a pure heart and they will answer. the dance, the song. Perhaps it was why the seer insisted only she could heal the prince. Perhaps it was Asama's destiny to use the gift her mother gave her. Asama stood up and slowly turned to face the room. "Please, give me a little space," she said softly. There must have been something in her voice, calm, assured, that made everyone obey at once. The queen released the prince's hand and moved back. The king stepped aside. The servants and the princesses edged away, creating a circle of open floor around the bed. Asama closed her eyes for a heartbeat and silently called out in her heart, "Oh, ancestors, guide me now." Then she removed the light scarf from her head and set it aside, as if removing any remaining barrier between her and the energies around her. When she opened her eyes, they gleamed with quiet resolve. She began to dance. At first, Asama's movements were slow and deliberate. She slid one foot forward, then the other, swaying her hips gently in time with an inaudible rhythm. Her arms rose gracefully above her head, then floated down, and she thought she was smoothing invisible silk over the prince's body. All eyes were on her. King Obika watched, his mouth slightly open. Queen Nneka pressed her hands to her chest, hardly daring to breathe. Aduri's face lit with a glimmer of hope. Asama's bare foot traced a circle around the bed, a small circle of protection. With each step, her confidence grew. This was not a dance of the royal court meant to dazzle nobles. This was a dance of the village, a dance of the earth and spirit meant to heal. It was as if Asama had called the soul of Umudike into that room. The gentle sway of tall grasses, the nurturing cradle of mothers, the whisper of prayers by candlelight. She began to hum, a gentle melody that resonated deep in the chest. The sound was wordless at first, but filled with emotion. Queen Nneka felt tears prick her eyes. It reminded her of the sound of women mourning and hoping at the same time, a song of heartbreak with the promise of dawn. Soon, Asama's hum formed into soft words. She sang a plea, her voice barely more than a breath, yet clear in the silence. "Oh, ancestors, hear my plea. Bring back his health, let it be. Oh, great spirit of earth and sky, let not our beloved prince die." Her tone was tender and beseeching. The simple words hung in the air, and those listening found themselves silently echoing the prayer in their own hearts. Queen Nneka bit her lip to keep from sobbing out loud. King Obika closed his eyes, a single tear escaping and rolling down his cheek. Asama continued her dance, gradually making her steps a bit larger, her turns a bit wider. Her skirt swirled softly around her ankles as she moved. Chika the seer began to gently tap his staff on the floor in a slow beat. Thump, thump, thump. Seeing this, one of the servants in the doorway picked up a small hand drum that had been left by a healer and joined in with a quiet rhythm. The other servants and even some of the guards just outside started clapping their hands softly, matching the beat. The entire palace seemed to hold its breath, hearts pounding with that gentle drum beat. Asama felt the energy around her shift, as if unseen eyes were watching, unseen hands guiding her emotions. She continued in the next verse of the ancient lullaby her mother had taught her, her voice growing steadier. "O life, return to him now. Choose the shadows from his brow. By the rising of the sun, heal this prince. O healing come, hear our cry. O spirit old and new, let his strength be born anew." Her voice rang out softly but firmly. It was the voice of love and command wrapped in one. A voice that neither begged nor demanded, but invited the miracle to take place. Those present would later swear that as Asamma sang, the very air in the room grew warmer, glowing with a subtle light. Some said they felt a breeze that smelled of sweet blossoms sweep through, though the windows were closed. Aduri even later claimed she had faint voices humming in harmony, the voices of ancestors answering Asamma's call. Asamma moved with more vigor now. She spun slightly, once, twice, each spin punctuating the plea in her song. She stepped forward and back in a pattern, as though dancing with an invisible partner, perhaps the spirit of the prince himself, leading him back to the world. Her arms wove an invisible tapestry of healing in the air. As she raised her arms high and slowly brought down over Prince Obina's form, it was as if she was pulling healing from the heavens and pouring it into him. Everyone watched in awe. The king silently mounted a prayer. The queen rocked her knees, her eyes fixed on her son. The princesses clutched each other's hands tightly, tears streaming, and servants peered in with hopeful faces. Then, in the middle of a slow twirl, Asamma felt a touch on her wrist. She halted, gasping softly. Prince Obina's hand had shot out and grasped her. The drum beats and clapping fell silent in an instant. All eyes flew to the prince's face. Prince Obina's chest rose in a deep sudden inhale. His eyes fluttered open, dark lashes lifting as he squinted against the lamplight. He looked confused for a moment, as if waking from a long dream. The queen let out a cry of pure joy. "Obina!" she sobbed, reaching for her son's face and cradling his cheek. But Prince Obina's gaze was on Asamma. He held her wrist with surprising strength for someone who had been so weak, as if to steady himself between dream and reality. "Asamma," he croaked, his voice dry and faint. Asamma, tears spilling down her face, knelt by him immediately. She covered his hand with hers. "Yes, my prince," she whispered, her smile radiant through her tears. I'm here. The prince blinked, taking in her face as though to be sure she was real. "I heard you," he managed, his voice growing a bit stronger. "I was lost in darkness, but I heard you calling me. I followed your voice." He gave a weak laugh, and a hint of his old playful smile appeared. "You brought me back." A collective cheer erupted. Queen Nneka laughed and cried all at once, throwing her arms around her son and Asamma both. King Obika shouted in relief, "He's awake! My son is alive!" He dashed forward, and for the first time in many years, that stern king openly wept as he grasped his son's shoulder. The palace servants and guards whooped in celebration. Some began dancing where they stood, turning Asamma's healing dance into a victory dance. Aduri tackled two of her older sisters in a hug, and the princesses were jumping and crying with joy. Prince Obinna, still looking a bit dazed, slowly pushed himself to sit up with his mother's help. The feverish flush was gone from his skin, and as he propped himself against his pillows, strength seemed to flow back into his limbs. He looked around at the smiling, tear-streaked faces of his family and the palace staff cheering by the door. Finally, his eyes rested on Asamma, who was kneeling at his bedside, one of his hands clasped firmly between hers. He smiled warmly at her, and she blushed, joy and relief pouring from her in waves. Queen Nneka cupped Asamma's face suddenly with both hands. "Thank you, thank you, thank you," the queen cried, her composure entirely forgotten. "You saved him, Asamma, you saved my boy." She pulled Asamma into an embrace, and Asamma felt the hot tears of the queen on her shoulder. They were tears of gratitude, not sorrow, and Asamma found herself crying too, tears of happiness and disbelief at what had just happened. King Obika cleared his throat, trying to regain a bit of royal dignity as he wiped his eyes. He approached Asamma. For a heartbeat, he simply looked at her. This young woman, who had performed a miracle and shown such grace. Then, with emotion that surprised everyone, King Obika slowly went down on one knee before Asamma. The noisy chamber went silent in an instant, all except Prince Obina's steady breathing. Asamma was mortified. The king should not kneel to her. She tried to get up to pull him to his feet, but King Obika gently took her hands and kept her in place. "Asamma," he said, voice thick with emotion, "no words will ever be enough to thank you for what you have done. You have saved my son, and in doing so, saved us all from heartbreak." He bowed his head to her. "I am sorry, so sorry, for the way you were treated. I allowed my pride to harm someone precious. Please, can you ever forgive me?" Asamma's eyes widened. She certainly hadn't expected this. Quickly, she dropped to her knees too, so that the king was no longer below her. "Your Majesty, please, you mustn't," she said earnestly. "There is nothing to forgive, truly. I know you feared for your son and your kingdom's honor. You did what you thought was right." She hesitated, then continued softly. "I forgive everything the moment I saw the prince in need. I'm so grateful I could help." The king lifted his head and gave Asamma a smile of profound relief and gratitude. He rose, bringing her up with him. "You are as noble as any highborn lady, Asamma," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "The gods themselves have spoken through your actions today." Queen Nneka, wiping her tears, nodded. "Indeed, we owe you our son's life," she said, taking Asamma's hands in hers. Behind them, the three older princesses stepped forward, looking sheepish but happy. The eldest, Princess Adeze, spoke first, her voice trembling with remorse. "Asamma, we were wrong about you. I was wrong. Can you ever forgive us for how we treated you before?" "Yes, please forgive us," Princess Adanna added, eyes cast down. "We are so ashamed. We have shown more bravery and heart than any of us." Princess Adako the third nodded. "We are deeply sorry, Asamma. We will make it up to you, I promise." Asamma looked at the three beautiful princesses who had once sneered at her. Now they looked at her with sincere respect and regret. She gave them a gentle smile. "Of course," she said warmly. "Let's put all that behind us. We have a new day now." The princesses each sighed with relief, and one by one embraced Asamma briefly, adding their quiet thank yous for saving their brother. Aduri, who had been bouncing on her feet with joy, suddenly flung her arms around Asamma's waist. "I knew it," she exclaimed, grinning up at Asamma. "I knew you were special from the start." Everyone chuckled at Aduri's expression. She had been the one to befriend Asamma earlier on, and now her fate was vindicated. Old Chika stepped forward, tapping his staff for attention. The room quieted, and a knowing smile played on the seer's lips. "This is a day of revelations," he said. "The prince is healed, and hearts have been changed. But there is one more truth that must be brought to light." He looked around meaningfully and then at King Obika. "Your Majesty, the spirits spoke one more thing to me when I sought their guidance." The king raised an eyebrow, still smiling from the joyous event. "Another thing? Wise one?" he asked. "After such a miracle, what could there be?" Chika beckoned Asamma to come closer. Confused, Asamma stepped forward beside the king. Chika placed one of his hands on Asamma's shoulder and the other on King Obika's. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the threads of destiny run deeper than we imagine. King Obika, do you recall the name of your first love many years ago?" The room went still. King Obika's eyes widened slightly. Why would the seer bring that up now, on this day of all days? I do," the king said quietly. "Her name was Ifunanya." Asamma gasped softly. Ifunanya. That was her mother's name. Her mother, who had died when Asamma was a child. Why was the king speaking her name with such tenderness? Chika smiled kindly at Asamma. "Child, what is your mother's name?" he prompted, though he clearly already knew the answer. My mother's name was Ifunanya," Asamma stammered, looking between the seer and the king in astonishment. "But how did you know?" Her heart started to thud in her chest. She suddenly felt the eyes of everyone in the room on her now. This time not in celebration, but in curiosity and downing realization. King Obika's face drained of color, then flushed with a rush of emotion. He stared at Asamma, truly seeing her face for the first time. The shape of her eyes, the line of her jaw. In that moment, he saw the ghost of a young woman he had once loved more than life itself. "Ifunanya," he whispered, voice catching. "It cannot be. Are you telling me?" He looked at Chika, needing confirmation of what his heart already suspected. Chika nodded, eyes bright. "Yes, Your Majesty. The spirits revealed to me that this girl, Asamma, is the daughter of Ifunanya, the woman you once loved and lost." A collective gasp went up. Queen Nneka brought her hands to her mouth. The princesses looked at one another, stunned. Prince Obina's jaw dropped. He had heard stories of his father's youthful romance, but never in his wildest dreams imagined Asamma was connected to it. Aduri's eyes darted excitedly between her father and Asamma. Asamma was frozen in shock. She knew her mother had lived in the capital in her youth, and that she had left under sad circumstances, but her mother had never told her the name of the man she loved. Could it be the king himself? Asamma's voice trembled as she addressed King Obika. "Your Majesty, did you know my mother?" King Obika stepped closer to Asamma, tears forming in his eyes for the third time that day. "Ifunanya," he murmured, almost to himself. "We are very young. I was just a prince then. She was the daughter of a merchant. so full of life, so kind. He drew a shaky breath. We fell in love. I wanted to marry her, but my parents, the king and queen at the time, forbade it. They had promised me to a princess of another kingdom. I had no choice. I broke Ifunaya's heart. She left the city. He closed his eyes, pain evident on his face. Not a day went by that I didn't regret it, but I never knew she had a child. Queen Nneka stepped forward and gently touched her husband's arm, her eyes soft with understanding. King Obika opened his eyes and looked at Asama as if seeing a miracle. Asama, he said hoarsely, your mother was my Ifunanya. Asama felt as if the ground swayed beneath her. Her mother, the king's long-lost love? She had always felt there was something special about her mother's past, but she never imagined this. My mother spoke of a man she loved in her youth, Asama said softly, a tear rolling down her cheek. She never told me his name, and only that he was kind, but their love was not allowed, she said. She said that love, even if lost, could still bless one's life in unexpected ways. Asama's voice broke at the memory of her mother's gentle teachings. I think she would be very happy to see us here now. King Obika let out a small sob and, to everyone's surprise, pulled Asama into an embrace. He held her like a father would hold a dear child. Your mother was a remarkable woman, he said, his voice thick. And you are her living legacy. No wonder there is such light and goodness in you. The blood of my beloved flows in your veins. Asama's tears fell freely as she returned the embrace. The king's words filled a missing piece in her heart, an answer to why she had always felt drawn to this palace, to this family. Fate had indeed woven them together. Queen Nneka joined, wrapping her arms around both her husband and Asama. In her heart, the queen felt no jealousy or anger. How could she? Instead, she felt awe at how destiny had worked. She looked at Asama and said warmly, it seems the spirit wanted to bring you home, my dear, home to us. Prince Obinna slowly stood from his bed, still a bit unsteady, but he could not remain still during this revelation. He moved to Asama's side as the group hugged gently parted. The prince took Asama's hands in his eyes searching hers. This means, he began, and then broke into a smile. This means my heart chose you not only for who you are, but perhaps because some part of me already felt you were family. Asama laughed softly through her tears. The prince's sweet words wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket. Family, she repeated. She looked around at the king, the queen, the princesses, and finally back to Prince Obinna. Yes, she thought, a family bound not by birth alone, but by love and destiny. King Obika wiped his face and regained a bit of his authoritative air. He turned to address everyone present. Hear me now, he announced, voice clear and joyful. From this day forth, Asama is one of us. The palace will be her home, and she will be treated with all the respect and love due to a member of the royal family. A chair went up from the doorway where servants and guards had been eavesdropping in sheer amazement. The three older princesses hurried to Asama's side. This time, their gestures were not tentative, but wholeheartedly affectionate. They encircled her in a flurry of silks and perfumes, each one giving her a squeeze and chattering excitedly. Oh, sister, said one, we have so much to show you. Another wiped Asama's tears and said, you must wear my best necklace at dinner tonight. The third laughed, wait till the palace hears the story. Prince Aduri practically danced around the room. Does this mean I get another sister and she gets to marry my brother. This is the best day ever. The room filled with gentle laughter. Prince Obinna chuckled and gently pulled Asamma free of the well-meaning princess's mob, holding her hand. He looked into her eyes with a mix of playfulness and sincerity. Asamma, he said, a grin spreading on his face. It seems my father has given you a family and a home today, but there is one more thing I would ask for, if you have me. Asamma's breath caught, and she felt a flutter in her stomach. The prince got down on one knee, properly this time, not in fevered weakness, but in full health and clear mind. He held her hand on his heart. You already saved my life and captured my heart. Will you do me the honor of being my wife so that we never have to be apart again? The room went silent in anticipation, though all were smiling. Asamma felt pure happiness welling up inside her. She gently pulled Prince Ifeanyi up, for he was still recovering after all, and with a bright laugh she replied, Yes, yes, of course, with all my heart. Cheers and applause thundered through the chamber. The king clapped his son on the back. The queen embraced Asamma again, and the princesses started talking all at once about wedding plans and dresses, until Queen Nneka laughingly shushed them, saying the couple needed a moment. Prince Obinna, looking a bit tired but blissfully happy, leaned his forehead against Asamma's. I knew from that first day you scolded me in the kitchen for trying to steal a meat pie that you were someone special, he teased gently. Asamma giggled. And I knew the day you helped me carry vegetables from the market that you had a kind heart under all your mischiefs. They both laughed, and Prince Obinna gave Asamma's hands a squeeze. Thank you for coming back to me, he whispered. I will always come back to you, Asamma replied softly. And with everyone watching, the prince and his humble chef turned princess sealed their promise with a gentle embrace. That evening, the news spread like wildfire through Umudike. The prince is healed. The royal chef saved him with a magical dance. She's to be our princess bride. Villagers gathered in the twilight outside the palace, singing songs of celebration and pounding drums. The king, in a happy mood, ordered the palace gates opened and invited all to partake in the impromptu festival. And what a celebration it was! The palace cooks, with Asamma happily supervising, for she insisted on helping prepare her own welcome back feast, served generous portions of spicy jollof rice, roasted yams, and peppered fish, and sweet cakes to one and all. The king made a speech in the courtyard, telling the whole tale to the gasping crowd, from Asamma's unjust banishment to the prince's illness, to the seer's message, and finally to the miraculous healing dance and the outstanding revelation of Asamma's heritage. When King Obika proclaimed that Asamma would marry Prince Obinna, the cheer that rose up was heard all across the kingdom. Throughout the night, the palace was filled with music and laughter. Town elders shook their heads in wonder at how things had turned out, and mothers pointed out Asamma to their little children, saying, See that kind lady? She is proof that good things happen to good people. The three eldest princesses mingled freely and humbly with the townsfolk. Having learned their lesson, they accepted congratulations for their brother's recovery with grace, always redirecting praise to Asamma for her brave actions. Aduri made sure Asamma's father had a seat of honor and a cup full of palm wine at all times. You will stay here in the palace from now on, won't you, Papa? She asked him sweetly, having already taken to calling him Papa as Asamma did. The old man laughed, tears of joy in his eyes, and patted Aduri's head. My home is wherever my daughter is cherished, he replied, giving Asamma who was dancing nearby with a gaggle of village children, a grateful smile. Late into the night, under a canopy of stars, Asama and Prince Obinna slipped away from the palace for a quiet moment. They walked hand in hand to the very royal kitchen where they first truly noticed each other. The fires had died down for the day, and it was calm except for the distant music from the courtyard. Prince Obinna chuckled as he lifted Asama into one of the study tables, the same one where she used to roll dough. He stood between her knees and looked at her with utter contentment. What a story we will have to tell our children someday, he mused, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Asama smiled, resting her forehead against his. A story I will never forget to give thanks to, she replied. They stayed like that for a long moment, just breathing in the happiness of the day. When they returned to the courtyard, they found King Obika speaking to a crowd of villagers and palace folk who lingered, unwilling to let the joyous day end. The king raised his palm for quiet and declared, "Let it be known across the land, humility, love, and courage had resided in a simple chef and have saved us all. We must remember this lesson well." He then held up a gilded goblet of palm wine. "To Asama and Obinna," he toasted. "To Asama and Obinna," the people echoed, voices ringing in the night. The next days in Umudike were filled with even more happiness. The entire kingdom prepared for a royal wedding unlike any other, one where a commoner turned heroine would marry the beloved prince. Tailors walked through night to sew fine garments. Farmers donated their fattest goats and cows for the feast, and the palace maids giggled as they helped Asama try on exquisite coral bead jewelry gifted by Queen Nneka. When the wedding day arrived, the kingdom rejoiced. Asama walked down the aisle in a gorgeous gown of blue and gold, with Princess Aduri and her other new sisters attending her. King Obika himself proudly gave her hand to his son. "Take care of each other," he said with tears in his eyes. There was not a dry eye in the hall as the prince and Asama exchanged their vows, pledging to love and honor one another all their days. It was said that the celebration after their wedding lasted an entire week, and the sounds of dancing and singing echoed from the palace from dawn till midnight. In every corner of Umudike, people shared the tale with delight. How a girl once scorned became the shining light of the kingdom. And they always ended the tale with the wise saying that summarized its many lessons. As for Asama and Prince Obinna, they lived many years together, ruling with compassion and humility. The first three princesses became their best friends and staunchest supporters. Aduri practically lived in Asama's pocket, adoring her new sister and learning everything she could from her. The king and queen cherished Asama as the daughter of an old love and the daughter-in-law of their dreams. And each year, on the anniversary of the great healing, the whole family would gather in the palace courtyard, and Asama would perform that gentle dance again, this time in joy and gratitude, as her children clapped along and her husband, the prince, watched with pride. The story of the royal chef of Umudike was told and retold, passed down through generations, and whenever people shared it, around the fires at night or under the moonlit village squares, they would remind one another of the powerful lesson it carried. Never forget the lesson of Asama and Prince Obinna, dear friends. Never look down on anyone. Destiny has a way of lifting the humble and humbling the proud. The story teaches us that true worth lies not in status or appearance, but in the purity of one's heart. Asama, a humble chef, proved that love, kindness, and inner strength can overcome prejudice and pride. It reminds us to treat everyone with dignity, for the person we overlook today might be the one to save us tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching this amazing story about Asama on African Stories by V. If you liked it and felt inspired with her journey, please show your support by clicking the like button, sharing with your friends, and leaving a comment below. To see more interesting stories and learn about different cultures, subscribe to African Stories by V, and do not forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Your support means a lot and helps us bring more stories to you. Until we meet again, stay connected, stay inspired, and keep smiling.